How you feel about reporters has a lot to do with how you'll come across in an interview. So we need to talk for a minute about a major misconception regarding reporters. A reporter's comments about huge explosions and quotes from frightened neighbors certainly do make it look as though they're trying to put the company in a bad light, but they're not. The fact is, reporters don't care much about your company one way or the other. What they care about is a story. This is very important. One thing, maybe the only thing, that you have in common with reporters is that to keep your jobs, you have to keep your employers in business. And for a reporter, that means attracting and holding an audience. Well, what is it about any story that attracts and holds an audience? Think about it. Whether we're talking about Shakespeare, a news story, or a fairy tale, what makes any story interesting? Sex or romance, violence, conflict, emotion, and sensationalism. The more of these elements a story has, the more interesting it becomes to everybody. Reporters learn very early to go after stories that have these elements. Take our incident, for example. It's already sensational because it's out of the ordinary. It's violent because of the explosion. There is emotion because neighbors are angry and worried and two people are hurt. But now we turn things up a notch, because reporters have ways of increasing the emotion, sensationalism, and controversy of a story. They do it by asking certain kinds of questions. They can, for example, interview neighbors until they find someone who's upset and willing to say so. Now there's more emotion and controversy in the story than there was before. In exactly the same way, reporters will look to you and your people to make the story more interesting.
What if the tank explodes?
That's called a hypothetical question. It's the bread and butter of the reporter's trade, and perhaps the most common way a reporter adds zing to a story. But keep in mind that it's not the question that does the damage, it's the answer. Watch. The thing to remember is reporters are not out to get you. You aren't on their mind much at all, except as a small piece of a story they're trying to build. And that's neither good nor bad, that's just the way it is. But it does create a problem for us. In an emergency, you may well be the only person with good information about what's happening. You need to tell the community what's going on. But since the media's agenda is so different from yours, we have to figure out a way to deal safely with a reporter when the two of you are thrown together during the emergency. Well, there is a way. It involves 9 simple points. 9 things your community wants, needs, and deserves to know about the incident when you step in front of a camera. By talking about these 9 points and nothing else, you adequately inform your community and keep yourself out of trouble. 1. Tell who you are and what your role is in dealing with the incident. 2. Tell what happened, very simply and clearly. As important as the face-to-face encounters with reporters are, the odds are actually greater that you'll hear from a reporter by telephone. This kind of media contact can take several forms. A reporter may want a reaction to a breaking news story. For example, a ruling has just come down from the courts regarding emission standards, and the reporter wants to know how you feel about it. Or the reporter may be working on a story and he's calling to get some technical information. In some cases, a reporter may just call to see if anything is going on worth reporting. But since we're focusing on dealing with the media during emergencies, let's consider that kind of contact first. Let's say you've just had a fire at your facility large enough to trigger a call to local fire departments.
Bowen.
David, there's a reporter from Channel 4 on line 1 calling about the fire. Do you want to take it?
Reporters monitor all the emergency channels, and as soon as they hear something that might be worth covering, they'll get in their vehicles and head your way, or pick up the telephone and call you, or both. In some cases, they may call first to find out whether the story is big enough to warrant sending a crew. What you say and the way you say it can have a lot to do with how aggressively the media pursue the story. But never lie about the nature of an emergency. You wouldn't jump into an on-camera interview without a plan, and neither should you jump into a telephone interview. Take the time to collect your thoughts and decide what you want to say.
June, tell him I'm tied up right now. Get a name and number, and I'll call him back in 5 minutes.
I'll take care of it.
Okay, thanks.
David has just accomplished two things. He's bought some time, and he now has a record of the name and telephone number.